morning, everybody. It's Jeff Goldberg for the Sales Pro Network. It is Friday, August 4th. Yesterday, we had a bonus session, and today is Friday. So give me a second. I'll tell you what we're doing today. If you haven't joined us before, I'm a sales coach and trainer, and I work with individuals and organizations internationally to help them increase their sales. And I founded the Sales Pro Network as a place where salespeople can come and hang out, learn, earn, network with each other, and to elevate the profession of sales, but mostly to put more money in salespeople's pockets. Every Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern, we either do a live training or usually it's a live interview with somebody who can add value to the profession of sales. And of course, today is no exception. Before I introduce you to our guest, if you're watching us live, please say hello in the comments. If you're watching us live on Facebook, but have not connected your account to StreamYard, it's just going to say Facebook user. I won't know who you are. So if you do say hello and you're on Facebook, please put your name in. And of course, if you have any questions for today's guest, please put those in the comments and we'll pass them along. And finally, if you're watching us on the replay, please put replay in the comments. And with that, let me introduce you to the co-founder of Phone Blogger and Video Socials. And he's a marketing expert and a friend of mine. I'm proud to introduce you to Vik Rajan. Good morning, Vik.
Hey, Jeff. Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to talk to you today. Vik does a lot of different things. We're going to hear about some of them. One of them is if you're getting the reminder emails that you get about to remind you to tune into these podcasts or broadcasts. Vik is the guy, his company actually put those together for me. And I was just telling him just yesterday, I closed a deal because somebody said, oh yeah, I've been getting those reminders and I spoke to you a year ago, but they really help you stay top of mind for me. So there's nothing like consistently staying in touch with people, no matter how you're doing it, to keep top of mind so that when they do need what you have, they reach out to you. And with that, Vik, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, the 2 or 3 minute version of what brought you up to this point?
Sure. Thank you, Jeff. So I run a service called Video Socials. We are kind of a full service video blogging and podcast management service. So that includes everything from email marketing and email reminders, email newsletters, email blasts, that kind of thing, to video blogs, including written blogs, because once we have video, we can turn it into written articles. So that's social media articles, blogging, and then, of course, in the world of podcasts, a lot of our members and our clients enjoy doing these kinds of things, Jeff, where they enjoy interviewing referral relationships, other experts, client resources, maybe even potential clients. And it's a done-for-you service where they get to show up at showtime and we handle all the guests and all the audio, video stuff. And of course, again, the publishing on social, on their website, email, etc. So it's Video Socials is also a video blogging community. Our members come on to things which we call video blogging clubs, which are basically small meetings on Zoom. It's kind of like a networking group on Zoom, except instead of an elevator pitch, each person takes turn to present a 2 to 3 minute topic, which can be a preview or a summary of their latest podcast episode, or an answer to a question and answer, frequently asked questions, that kind of thing. And it basically helps them stay accountable and consistent and encouraged to do their content marketing on a week-to-week basis.
Yep. And by the way, if you like the opening to this show, that those blue bars and the music and the countdown and everything, Vik's company did that for me too. I really appreciate that Vik, you're the kind of guy who says, here's what I can do for you, but you don't push anything. Vik has a lot of different things that I could be using him for, but I only use him for a few. And Vik's never pushy. He's really the kind of guy who's there to do the right thing for you, what you feel is right. So I really appreciate that. As a salesperson, what I teach is non-pushy sales, and Vik is certainly the embodiment of that. One of the things you say, Vik, is that millennials need our services. What do you mean by that? Why millennials, and what do they need?
Yeah, so I think I'm in Gen X, right? I think you're kind of in that later Gen X world too.
No, I'm a boomer, my friend.
Fair enough. Okay, boomer. And I know I'm guilty of it, and I think older generations are as well, where we hear millennial and we're still thinking like they're kids in their parents' basements. And the irony, of course, is that now the millennials have kids of their own. So the mature end of the millennials are in their later 30s. And so they are very much in the active working world, like they're taking over. And so from that aspect, the millennial generation are no longer kids. On the early end, the late stage millennials, they're in their 20s, or mid to late 20s. So for them, they are not the TikTok generation. If I'm the MTV generation, they're the Facebook generation. They don't really remember a time before the internet, so they grew up with the internet, but they're not like doing all the TikTok dancing. That's like Gen Z, etc. So millennials are going through everything that we're going through, where yes, they may be more text message oriented more than email, but they're as addicted to email because they're in the working world, right? They are very much taking over management positions. And so they themselves are already subject matter experts and thought leaders in their own right. I remember, and I'm sure you remember, knowing me back then, being the youngest person in the room, the youngest professional in the room. And I now realize the only thing worse than being the youngest person in the room is not being the youngest person in the room. And so now I see the millennials taking over, and that's great. And I think they need our services as much as the older crowd. The older crowd may not have the same tech savvy skills. You're an exception, Jeff, but older folks may not have be as tech savvy. But for us, it's really a time management aspect. It's kind of, look, we're ultimately trading time for dollars, regardless of the pricing model we have. And if we can really help people with their time and make sure that they can dedicate and focus their time towards the things that they should be focused on, we can take off all the rest of the stuff off their shoulders. And that's the benefit of outsourcing, delegation. That's really what my company does.
Nice. Yes. I vaguely remember being the youngest person in the room. These days, I'm pretty much the oldest person in the room every time, but that's okay. I'm still healthy, so I've got a couple of years left. Good morning, Bruce. It's always good to see you. He helps folks not to outlive their money during retirement. And somebody, I'm not sure who this is, says, good morning, gentlemen. Great subject. I love podcasting, but it absolutely is a lot of work. What's all the work about, Vik? I mean, what are all the things that we need to think about when we're doing podcasting? I know that I put a decent amount of effort into making these interviews go well. It doesn't take forever, but it does take some work.
A couple of hours. Yeah. I mean, I remember when I started my podcast, and very quickly I realized, I'm sure your guests are great and they never have to reschedule, and they never bother with, being delayed or answering the questions that you asked me for you to prep. But that could be a really annoying part of podcasts, is scheduling the guests, rescheduling the guests, making sure they're filling out the intake form or providing questions. For those of you who don't know the world of late night talk shows and podcasts and panels, our job as panelists and podcast guests and guests on late night talk shows, so to speak, is to make folks like Jeff look good. And so we provide them questions. Now, this is not contrived. We didn't rehearse this at all. And he may never even ask me the questions that I provided him. But nevertheless, it makes it easier for the host to interview us as guests. And so that whole process can be really annoying to manage. And it's not difficult. It's just time consuming. So all that guest pre-episode stuff we take care of for our clients. So that itself reduces it from hours to minutes. And then typically for a lot of our clients, they want to be at the helm, kind of like where you are, Jeff, where you're focused in on having a conversation with me and vice versa. And so for our clients who may not be that great at, walking and chewing gum at the same time, we are able to kind of drive the car while they have the interview. And so from that aspect, we are behind the scenes running the show, doing the intro, the outro, commercial breaks, the whole bit, managing the comments as you are doing yourself. So you're ahead of the game in that sense. And then after the fact, as you know, it takes a heck of a lot of time just to stay consistent with not only editing the podcast if necessary, but then publishing it on the website, on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, etc. Then doing the emails and getting the information to guests, because I'm looking forward, as much as I'm thankful for you to have me as a guest on the show, I'm looking forward to sharing this show with my circle of influence once I get the links to it. I know we're streaming live, but I can also share it after the fact. And so we want to make sure that our clients' guests have that stuff, because it makes them look good for them to be interviewed on a podcast the way you're making me look good. So yeah, it's not difficult work. It's just time consuming, especially to do it over and over and over again, and to do it consistently and to do it well. And so, yeah, we take it off our clients' shoulders so they can show up at showtime, and that's about it.
Yep. Valerie Heffron, I see that was you, Valerie, before. You love podcasting. Booking guests, uploading to different podcast platforms, blah, blah, blah. It's a love-hate relationship. And I actually forgot to mention that for those of you who are listening to this as a podcast, this is actually a live video broadcast Vik's organization then takes that video, turns it into a podcast, does all the work behind that, and makes sure it's on all the platforms and gets me a report. So it's really a lifesaver. I will fight with you on one thing. It's not your job as the guest to make me look good as far as I'm concerned. It's my job to make you look good. But Vik's absolutely right. Pulling back the curtain, I reach out to every one of my guests the week of the interview and say, please send me at least 5 questions that you want me to ask you to make sure that I do focus on what you want to focus on. And when they don't do that, it makes my life more difficult. Of course, I go on their webpage and their LinkedIn profile to get questions, but sometimes they don't use that a lot. Like, as a matter of fact, this morning, as I was looking at you on LinkedIn, there's just not a heck of a lot there, but we'll talk about that later. But it does take a decent amount of work to make this look good, and Vik is a really excellent.
And I say, it's we can move on to other points, but I think like any partnership, right? My job is to make you look good. You're hoping to make me look good, and vice versa, and that's how the show becomes better for everyone. And that's like in any
and of course, the real goal here is how do I provide value to the people who are listening to it, because that's what the Sales Pro Network's all about. What is a branded expert? I know what an expert is, but what's a branded expert?
Yeah, I mean, if you think of the world of a thought leader or a subject matter expert, right? So all of us are a couple of chapters ahead. We can call ourselves experts to some extent. Attorneys have to be careful how they use that word. We work with a lot of lawyers, and so they have to be careful how and when they call themselves experts. But nevertheless, they can brand their expertise in such a way that they are known for that specific area that they work in. And that can happen in a lot of ways. In a very specific way, IP attorneys work on the literal branding instruments like trademarks, et cetera. But for us, it can be in a more general sense. That is, how are you known for that expertise? And that requires us to be repetitive in a sense, and to kind of have and play our greatest hits so that people are knowing us for that type of work. But it's also being in a variety of mediums. So it's not only written blogs, but video blogs and maybe even podcasts, if not hosting, if being a guest, doing seminars, webinars, panels, all that stuff. And it enables people to know, like, and trust us. At the end of the day, a brand, I think I actually heard someone say this, so I'll basically quote it. A brand is a proxy for the word trust. And brand happens through repetition, and repetition breeds familiarity, which leads to trust. Right or wrong, psychologically, that's how it works. And we just tend to trust things that we're familiar with. And that's what a branded expert is basically doing. He or she, as an expert, as a subject matter expert, can be kind of the best kept secret. And if we're out there in our own practice, where ultimately we are a sales and marketing professional, if we're in our own practice, or a sales professional at a larger organization, our job is to be known and liked and trusted as that professional, but also having the wherewithal, the competency to fulfill. And that's what expertise is. And so that's what a branded expert is, a known expert.
And there's so much that goes into it, and so many things you could be doing. Like, I'm not on every platform. I don't pay attention to Instagram. I'm not on TikTok, although I'm on it constantly looking at it. It's like heroin. It's lurking. It's really dangerous because it's so damn good. But I mean, for those of you who are watching this live, I wear the same black, well, it's not the same one. I have 5 of these, but the same black shirt every time. That's part of my brand. It's actually a conscious decision
the Steve Jobs of the sales training world.
It's exactly the thought I was going for. And the other side is, I don't like wearing suits. I hate wearing ties. And my goal has been all along, I'm a sales coach and trainer. And I speak in front of corporate audiences to get to the point where I can show up in jeans and a t-shirt like this, like Steve Jobs used to. Of course, he was a billionaire who founded Apple. I'm not quite that yet, but yeah.
Between you and Steve Jobs, you got a couple of billion.
Sorry?
Between you and Steve Jobs, you got a couple of $1 billion.
It's close. I'll say this for me, though. I'm still around, so sorry, Steve.
There you go.
But we love your stuff, Steve. You're still living on. So why should a salesperson become a branded expert, and how can they do that? What's the way they can transform themselves into a branded expert?
Yeah, so I think every sales professional, and I'm a sales professional just by virtue of running a company, and I'm the main salesperson at my company. Even if you don't fulfill the service literally, which I don't, right? So I have a wonderful staff, wonderful team. Jeff, you know some of them, where they do the real hard work. I do the fun work of this kind of stuff, and I get to speak and stuff like that. And so my job, essentially, one way or another, either it's outbound prospecting or inbound attraction of referrals. And so ideally, I want those word of mouth referrals because those are kind of a slam dunk, right? Those, we know the best form of marketing is word of mouth, where a raving fan is saying, you got to work with Jeff. And now it's just a matter of making it fit in terms of what they're looking for. And so that consultative process, and how we guide people through that process is our expertise, even if we don't literally fulfill the service or the product. And so being known for that product, well, you said it at the kind of the top of the show, where you know that I'm not going to be that pushy sales professional, but I'm going to be consultative and say, hey, these are the options, these are what we can do, and let's make it work and figure out what you need when. And so that process-driven sales professional, and then how does she repeat that, so to gain that familiarity and trust, is the process of branded expertise. Now, that can happen in a variety of media. As you mentioned, we don't have to be literally everywhere, though if you're in the right key places, your prospective clients are going to feel like you're everywhere. Because everywhere they turn, they're seeing you, they're seeing your name, they're seeing what you do, and they're thinking about you, which is the other aspect of branding, right? That we're literally changing the way someone's brain works. The synapses are literally changing to remember us. And the more they remember us, the more they can thus refer us and do business with us. And quite the opposite is true. If they don't remember us, they can't possibly do business with us. I'm sure, unfortunately, we've all had the experience where, oh my God, I can't believe I didn't think of you at that time. And it was after the fact, which is one of the reasons why we want to do emails regularly. We want to do blogs regularly, podcasts regularly. All these things of consistency, which can feel somewhat like a hamster wheel, is really about being remembered so that people can remark and refer us to other people. And so that's it. And it's hard to say in specific, is Instagram the right channel, or is TikTok the right channel, or is LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook the right channel? For our types of clients who tend to be consultants, attorneys, et cetera, so they are sales professionals in their own practice, it tends to be more LinkedIn, YouTube, maybe Facebook, less Instagram. But like we mentioned, the millennials are taking over, and they are that Instagram generation, which is why the Gen Zs are going to TikTok. Because the millennials are old now because they have kids. They're running away from Instagram and going to TikTok. So from that aspect, you don't have to be everywhere, but you have to be in those key places where it seems like you're everywhere for your target market.
It's great. And I could not agree with you more. I agree 100%. There's nothing like a well-made referral. The deal that I spoke about, that it took a year to close, and he mentioned that, he's getting these emails, and that kept me top of mind. That came from a referral. And now, I didn't close it a year ago. He went with somebody else a year ago. It's to speak at an event he's holding for his 25 salespeople. But it's that referral that paved the way to get me in. I never would have known about this guy. He wasn't on my radar, but an introduction got me to speak to him. Didn't close at the time, but a year later, because of the referral that was made a year ago and the consistent keeping my name in front of him with your help in other ways, it turns into a deal, which I'm very excited about.
Branding yourself and branding your expertise is a way of nurturing those referrals and nurturing those potential clients who, it's the right place in the right time. The timing wasn't right. The fit wasn't right at that time, where he didn't realize the value. But your branding efforts really nurtured that relationship in a subtle enough way where it wasn't bothersome and annoying, because you don't want to overstay your welcome, but it wasn't bothersome, and it gave him just enough value for him to click reply and do business with
you. Yeah, that's actually my strategy. I'm in another Facebook group, and somebody was saying yesterday, how do you use social media to develop business if you do it all? And I said, well, I just consistently drip out information that's of value to the people that I want to do business with. And her question was, well, are you dripping value and then saying, go to my website? I'm like, nope, it's simply, here's value. I'm giving you the information that I charge organizations and coaching clients rather substantial amounts of money to learn from me, but I'm giving you a little bit at a time, so that I'm constantly giving you something that's of value to you. My belief is when you give, and give enough, eventually people go, I think I need to talk to this person. And that's certainly my LinkedIn strategy. I get about 30% of my business from LinkedIn, and it's not from me reaching out to people at all. I'm not against that. There's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it, but I just don't do that at this point. It's just simply content marketing. And speaking of another content marketer, Chris Vaglio says, yep, podcasting is a wonderful way to stay top of mind with your network and relationships. What's a content calendar framework, and how do we use that?
So there are two ways of looking at the world of content marketing. For most people, I actually suggest a very simple, down-to-earth, and kind of roll up the sleeves and get going philosophy. It's kind of, I use the analogy of driving a car, though content marketing is a lot safer in this regard, where if you're learning how to drive, just get into the car and go. Not literally, right? Because you need the trainer with you, right? So it's very similar to sales in that sense. You need a trainer or a coach like yourself. But you want to start driving, and you don't need a whole big strategy and a map and where you're going. So it's very much granular. Just you got to start practicing. So in the world of content marketing, especially if it's video blogs or podcasts or even writing, in the beginning, your first set of articles or blogs or what have you, pieces of content, aren't going to be your best, and you're probably not going to have your largest audience at that. So you may as well just get started and go. Like, you're not going to be wrong when you start picking random topics and start on the topics. Just think of the frequently asked questions that your clients and potential clients ask you and start answering those. And then eventually you'll get to the rarely asked questions, or the questions that should be asked. What do they, they don't know what they don't know, and start answering that, because that's going to be the aha moments. You're not going to be wrong. Now, they may be disjointed, fragmented, and unstrategic, but again, it's not wrong. You're not suddenly just going to be blogging about donuts unless you run a donut shop. So you're not wrong. Now, from a content calendar framework perspective, think of that as being, you can't really see that. Top down instead of bottom up. Bottom up is just start blogging, just start doing something. Something is better than nothing. You can't go wrong. You're going to be way ahead of 90% of the people who are constantly thinking about it and not doing it. And now you are doing it. So you're immediately setting yourself apart and branding your expertise. Eventually, you'll get to a point where you want to sophisticate that, and you want more of a long-term view and a content calendar. And think of the framework as kind of looking at the 12-month calendar, and start thinking of the time management technique that I always think of, the big rocks and little rocks, right? That you put in the important little rocks important big rocks in first, and then you can always fill in the blanks with the little rocks. Same thing here. So if you think of the 12-month calendar of what your clients are going through, what your prospects are going through, from their perspective, are there recurring themes of times of year that things are important in their world? There may be conferences, festivals, kind of holidays in their world. Now, they may be literal holidays, like December is full of religious holidays, but there may be other tie-ins, not only July 4th and Halloween as, again, mainstream holidays, but there are kind of times of the year. Easiest example is accountants, because we are all on one side of the table, if not both, where accountants know that pretty much every month, the 15th of the month is something for someone. So it may be March 15th in corporate taxes, April 15th, of course, nonprofit, I forget is which month of the 15th. And so they know their market. And, we know as corporate people that, March 15th is the date of April 15th, and give or take, depending on the Friday, Sunday issues. And then October 15th, if you are an extension, et cetera. And these are kind of holidays, maybe not in the greatest sense of the word, but these are special days. And so you can put in those big rocks as those big themes. And so you can think of every season or every quarter having a theme, and then you can start going more granular in terms of topics. And within each topic, think of it as a table of contents. Then you have individual titles. Another way of looking at topics and themes are kind of services that you provide. So if you have, a website and you kind of list your main services, well, those are probably large enough buckets of topics, possibly themes, and themes is just a larger word than topic, because that's all. Multiple topics include a theme. And then you can granularize it into titles. So when we do this with our clients, we say, hey, just get started. In the beginning, just get started using a tool that we have called Blog Brainstormer. So anyone can go to videosocials.net/topics and actually get the Blog Brainstormer. It's no cost, and it's something we use literally on. I use it. I was just about to use it this morning, but one of my clients forgot she had a doctor's appointment. But I was literally about to break out the Blog Brainstormer and use it for her this morning. So I use it multiple times a week with our clients, where we come up with blog topics. Now, once they get to a point where they're creating that top-down approach, we use it to create themes, and then we can know the seasonality or the timeliness of those themes. And that's what we mean by the framework. That's pretty easy. You can be sophisticated and use a spreadsheet. And, I have tools like that we use with clients, but you can just start jotting it down. Again, if you're just starting and all that gobbledygook of content calendar framework sounds really overwhelming, well, you're not there yet. No big deal. It's kind of like me. I just started getting back into the gym. for me to start planning out the marathon, it's a bit too soon. My goal right now is to get on the treadmill every day. And so long as I get on the treadmill just about every day, all right, I'm doing the actions that will lead to habits. And as the habits take over, then I can be more strategic and start planning on more things like, the 5Ks and all that stuff. But the 5Ks and marathons, that's the content calendar's time. If you already have the habit of developing and producing content on a regular basis, well, now start thinking of it strategically of what do your clients and customers really need to be thinking about months from now. Again, like right now, the retailers are already thinking about the holiday season. We keep thinking about, Christmas keeps on, creeping into our life, and, Halloween is kind of holding it back. And now we have suddenly Christmas in July. So it's kind of leapfrogged it. Well, that's really the retail world are working months and months in advance. So the inventory for the Christmas and holiday season is already in place for, 5 months from now. Or whatever months from now, 5-6 months from now. From that aspect, we too, as content producers and branded experts, need to think months in advance. I would suggest a year in advance, because there's a lot of cyclical activity that happens. That could be
got it. Chris, who is also a great marketer, he runs a marketing agency, Rocket Marketing Agency, says create content that gives. I couldn't agree more. And I have to admit, I don't plan my content that far out in advance, but I can see there are certainly times of the year when there are certain themes, I like the word, that occur in my business. One of them would be around March or April, I start getting calls from people and emails from people saying, what am I going to do? Summer's coming, and everybody knows you can't sell during the summer. Well, first of all, that's a crock of crap. The reason people say that you can't sell during the summer is the answer is always, well, everybody's on vacation, Jeff. No, they're not. People are on vacation, but they don't go away for the whole summer typically. But that could certainly be a theme. But what I do is every Saturday morning, it's on my calendar to invest an hour creating my posts for the week. I use something called Buffer, which schedules them out.
Excellent.
Then I don't have to worry about it. They just go out automatically at a predetermined time on a predetermined day. Then I can really pay attention to the posts themselves and who's responding, so I can engage with them.
And we scheduled this podcast interview a couple of weeks ago, right? So you do it in the podcasting aspect of it.
Absolutely.
In your Facebook Lives aspect, you're basically planning 8 to 10 weeks. And most people who host an interview show plan it 8 to 10 a week. So that itself is a content calendar. We may not think of it as that because, again, it's a habit. It's very, second nature to you. But for those of us who host interview shows, we're typically booking out 2 to 3 months in advance. And so right there is a granularity that happens. And of course, planning and using that in a more proactive way is what the content calendar is about.
Yeah, I'm actually booking late January, early February right now for this show. I'm constantly stunned by the great people that I know and meet. And I booked somebody the other day for late January. She says nothing sooner. I'm like, I'm booked up. I think and that might be shocking for people who don't host a podcast, but people love being on podcasts. People are honored to be on podcasts, and it's a heck of a lot of fun to be on podcasts and to host one. So again, thanks, Jeff. And you also run an event, I think it's quarterly, for people who have podcasts and are looking for guests or who like to be guests on podcasts. Can you speak about that just a drop?
Yeah, I hope it's quarterly. So we started. So last January, our kind of coming out launch party, so to speak, of Video Socials VIP, which stands for Video Interview Podcasts. We launched that service kind of officially last January, really December. And kind of my notion, and with my business partner Mark Bullock, I was like, well, why don't we bring together all the people that we know that run podcasts. And potentially people who are guests on podcasts, but have an eye and an ear towards hopefully starting their own show once, because they are one day, because they are potential clients. And so I said, let's bring together, and it became almost too successful, as the story goes, where it became over 100 people. We were doing it monthly. I don't have an event planner, an event manager on staff or on team. And so it landed on my shoulders and my staff, and we became basically too busy with our clients. So I had to stop it. And then a couple of months ago, I was like, you know what? We ought to do that again. And so again, it was fantastic. I want to say it was like 40, 50 people, where vast majority were podcast hosts, and a lot of them, of course, being our clients, but people who were not our clients also we invited, because I just want to create this community, because not only do I love running a podcast and of course running a program that runs podcasts, but I also like being a guest on other people's podcasts. And one of the secrets of growing your audience and growing your show's influence and growing your podcast is to be a guest on other people's podcasts. And so it was a great way for our clients to get to know each other and for other people who are not yet clients to get to know each other and to be podcast guests on each other's shows. And so I think it was maybe it was May or June, I forget when it was. And my goal was to do it every month. Got really busy, so I don't know about this thing. I'm happy that that people do business over the summer because I ended up getting really busy. Couldn't do it this month, and so I'm hoping to do it quarterly because again, consistency is key. You know, I'm constantly talking about the virtues of consistency and how that produces results. And it's like, look, something is better than nothing. At least if it's consistently as a quarterly event, it's better than sporadically and never doing it again. So I'm hoping to make it a strategy. So thank you for bringing it up, Jeff. Stay tuned, everyone. Connect with me on LinkedIn so that you can hear about it. And I'm sure in coming months, we will organize it and I'll soon bring on an event manager that can really stay focused on it. Because I do this kind of stuff. For me to kind of get into the granular weeds of these kind of projects, you know, I'm way too sporadic, or way too scattered, I should say, for me to stay on top of every little thing. And so, yeah, that became really a concept. We're probably coming out with an automation tool for the world of podcast guests and podcast hosts. I'm hoping by the end of the year. So it's kind of part of that too. It might be kind of wrapped up into the launch of that product that I may, kind of restart the quarterly at the very least, and then hopefully every other month, and then monthly, because it provides a lot of value. I mean, it's a lot of fun. I mean, there are a lot of success stories. People got clients out of it, let alone podcast gigs out of it, guests for their show. And so all around is a win-win-win, not only for the people participating, obviously for us as well. And so that's the incentive, where it's just really a get together. There was no real hard sales pitch. I'm not that kind of a person, but it was really helping people kind of see how they can be valuable to each other.
I'm laughing because you're so not sales pitchy that I actually said something on the last ones to get you to say what you did. And it was great. I mean, first of all, it's a free event, which is very generous. I met, there's a lot of people there that I would not want on my podcast or that I wouldn't want to be on theirs, but I definitely met people that I do. And in fact, your partner, Mark, interviewed me for his podcast just last week. So it's a great thing.
It runs the gamut of topics, right? I mean, if it's like a health and wellness show, you may not be the best fit, not that you're not healthy or well, but if that's not what you do professionally, you may not have the subject matter expertise for their show, and vice versa. They're not in the sales professional world in the way that you want their expertise on your show. And so it's like no insult to anyone's person or character. It's just, you got to find the right fit.
Yep. And look, I'm constantly on the lookout for great guests because, there's a million people who want to be on podcasts, but not everybody's right. So something like this that exposes me to, I think there must have been 40 or 50 people at the last one. I definitely got some guests out of that. You're very big, like I am, on the use of video. Why video? Do you feel it's easy to use? And what can we do to make it the most effective?
So what I love about video, it is. So I remember we started video socials a year before COVID really struck. And so back then, people were not as comfortable being on video. The concept of being on video scared a lot of people. They didn't know if they even had a webcam. So it was like a lot of folly, a lot of issues that Mark had with me, Mark, my business partner. He wanted me to troubleshoot video. I'm like, I'm not doing all that. And so it was crazy. A year later, it became like, Logitech was sold out in webcams, and, it was kind of bittersweet in that sense. So from that aspect, now just about everyone is kind of used to being on video. There may be a discomfort or comfort level. The irony is that with video, if it's not live streamed like this, for most of my clients, their video is being pre-recorded or just recorded. Pre-recorded means recorded. So it's just being recorded. It's not being live streamed. And so there shouldn't be any pressure at all, because when we're talking in person, you only get one chance to make a first impression, but on video, you get multiple chances to make a first impression. So why be nervous? There's no reason. Just delete it and just practice. And then when you get used to it, then you can live stream. And so I love video for that reason. Like, you can practice until you get it right, until you feel comfortable. And then there's the waterfall or content cascading effect, meaning it's kind of top of the food chain, another analogy, where you can take that one piece of content of video and turn it into just about every other type of content that you want. Obviously, you have the audio if you have video. So first, we have video, you have still images, so you can create YouTube thumbnails, etc., out of just the still images. But then you can use the audio as itself as a podcast. You can take the audio and transcribe it. And nowadays we're in the world of AI. Nowadays the transcription tools are amazing that you can turn pretty much verbatim what you say into a written post. Now, I still suggest having the video version if you're going to use it verbatim, because we don't speak fully, in full sentences and grammatically correct. But that takes very minimal editing to get it there. And if you don't mind being 100% not grammatically correct and be the way you speak, have the video there, and now you have the transcript, which from a word of mouth standpoint, from a skimming standpoint, it's tremendous. From an SEO standpoint, tremendous. So now you have the written word. And so from there, you can start clipping. And there's so many AI tools now in the world of podcast and video that will create clips for you pretty much automatically, which is amazing. So it's like one of the aspects of AI that I really do like, that it doesn't really replace us, but it replaces the kind of the grunt work that is really difficult for us to do. And so now you have clips, and those clips can be turned into YouTube Shorts and Instagram Reels, etc. And so those are social media posts. And then of course, all that content can be given in a email. And so now you have email content as well. And so from one video, you've basically waterfalled your way into the rivers and the streams that really help to stay consistent and brand our expertise. That's why I love video, because it's so easy to do. It's so time effective. You can have other people do all that content reconfiguration. And it basically took just the time of that video for you. And once you're used to it, you get to do live stream. You have that aspect as well. And it's basically half an hour of your time.
I love that, Vik, and I love speaking with you. Like most solopreneurs, I'm juggling all day long. I've got a million things to do and not enough time to do them. And there's a lot of things I want to do that I haven't got to. And one of them is, because I do love TikTok, I want to get my stuff on TikTok. And I've been probably for 6 months going, I really need to devote some time to creating some TikTok videos. I really need to. But I just made a note while you were speaking. I'm like, I have these interviews. I've got years worth of these interviews. Yep. I could cut some of these up into little TikTok videos. The content's already there. And when you said there's AI that helps you do that, I want to hear about that, my friend.
Yeah. I'm literally in the midst of basically creating kind of, I don't want to recreate the wheel. Like, I'm a big fan of, Brander is a software automation tool that we use at Video Socials. I'm working on another software automation tool. My goal is never kind of to be a Me Too player or recreate what's already out there, so long as it works. And there's so many ones, there are about like 3 or 4 that I cannot remember, so please don't ask me. But I'm going to create that list. So if anyone wants that list, this is not meant to be a lead magnet, but it can be. I want to create that list really for folks I work with, like you, Jeff, where it's like, here, it's relatively easy. I'm not necessarily providing it as a service right now, but it's plug and play. I mean, that's the whole point of AI. And it's kind of like doing what even a virtual assistant need not do, because virtual assistants as people probably can be used or utilized in better and more effective ways. So let's enable humans to be that creative, relationship-oriented things rather than the machine-oriented things, and let the robots, let the computers do that kind of boring stuff. So from that aspect, it's amazing. And almost every week there's a new one, and they're outdoing each other, which is great. That's the power of competition. And so, within a week or two, I'll have that as a list of like, all right, here, and now we have to internally test it. But even before testing it, at least I can provide it as a resource for other people to use. Yeah. And it's really cool.
I certainly want that list, because as I was thinking of, as you were speaking, I was going, I should just repurpose these videos. Yeah. I use a software called Camtasia, which
that's old school. Yeah.
I'm more technical than the average human, but I know just enough to get myself in trouble. So I figured out how to use Camtasia, but it still takes time and effort. And actually, the first thought was maybe I should just have Vik's company do this for me. But there's a piece of me that says I want to put the clips up that I want. If I have an assistant doing it, he or she's going to choose what they think is best. So
which we have that issue with our clients as well, which is why we're not in the clipping service business, because that it becomes ridiculous. It's Camtasia, for those of you, it's basically it's screen capture, screen recording, and then you can chop it up. It's a video editing tool, and think of it as kind of desktop version and of Loom, or a more complex version of Loom that a lot of people know of nowadays. The AIs, will kind of be able to figure out question and answer, like, this 3-minute segment of us talking about AI, right? It can figure out that, all right, we're talking about AI for these 5-6 minutes. And then, but prior, we never talked about AI, and maybe right now we're going to end the conversation on AI. And so it can figure that out. And so it can give us at least a buffet of options and say, all right, I only want these 3 clips and not those 7. And so I think that can be helpful rather than us going through the full half hour or 45 minutes and listening. And then, of course, the micro amount of work, right, that we have to cut at the right moment, that can get annoying. Some tools are really cool because they'll give you the kind of the transcript, and you can clip video by words. So it's a lot easier to kind of clip by words because you can then be that precise, which is kind of cool. I like those kind of editing tools as well. So I try to see what's already out there so that I can learn from them, provide resources for our clients, maybe turn it into a service, or really see what are the gaps if I can hire my developer and create software tools where, all right, that's not really being done, but I need that very specific thing, and then maybe productize it.
Yeah, you nailed part of the issue that I have when I'm using Camtasia. If you miss something by a second, sometimes the video ends and your face looks like this, and you forget, because as you're making expressions, if you don't catch it at the right second, you look crazy, or you cut off a half a word and you got to go back and redo it. It takes a little time, and I'm not a video editor. This software is fairly easy to use, but yeah, talking about using AI, there's a lot of talk about that these days, and I get a lot of questions from salespeople. Do you think we're going to be replaced by AI? I don't think so anytime soon, at least. I mean, maybe somewhere.
Definitely not if you're relationship consultative and a branded expert. The person, there's that line, and I forget exactly that quote or meme that's going around, that you're not going to be replaced by AI. You're going to be replaced by a professional who's using AI. And so from that aspect, as sales professionals, so long as we focus on the relationship, the consultative process, branding expertise, we can use AI as a tool, but the machines are not going to be replacing us anytime soon, at least not this generation.
Unless you're a fan of Terminator, in which case they may take over someday, but I think we still got a little while.
Elon's working on that, I'm sure.
So how can salespeople embrace AI as a branded expert?
I think we just talked about it, right? That's an example, right? Where if you go top down for video into granular, into social media posts and email newsletters and blasts, that's an example. I think we talked about that of utilizing those. There are software tools that enable that, number one. Number two is also on the topic generation side. As much as I love our blog Brainstormer, it's not AI yet. You can basically, it's funny that you mentioned, you go to my LinkedIn and you're like, all right, what am I going to talk about? One of the things that is a little complicated to program right now, but it's here's an idea that I'd love to work on, but we could do it in a manual way. If you just copy and paste or copy someone's LinkedIn profile and then paste it into ChatGPT or any of those kind of AI tools, but ChatGPT 3 or 4 is really the popular one now. But first, prompt and say, hey, give me 3 or 4 topics on this theme of sales expertise based on this guy's LinkedIn profile. Here it is. And then paste, what I have on my LinkedIn. ChatGPT, and I've tested it, it will then spit out, and I say, 5 or 6 topics, say that, because then again, you get to cherry pick out of the 6 and you have the 3 topics that are really worthwhile. And so that's a really great way if you're interviewing someone, grab their bio off their website or off their LinkedIn profile, feed it into ChatGPT with that type of a prompt, make sure you put the theme of your episode or your topic or your blog, etc. And now it spits back to you topics. You can do the same thing reflexively on your own LinkedIn or bio. Feed it into ChatGPT and say, hey, this is the topic, what can I talk about? In effect, it's going to be using something like a blog brainstormer, like our tool, and basically give you those topic ideas. And it may not be perfect, but it'll get you 80-90% of the way there, and it kind of overcomes the writer's block, the content block that we may have of, what am I going to be blogging about? Well, here it is. And blog brainstormer does it in a manual sense, and then you can use AI to supplement.
Tell me a little bit more about blog brainstormer. I saw that on your website, and I didn't know what it was, and now you've mentioned it. Tell me what that is, please.
It's a really simple Google document. So you go to videosocials.net/topics, and it'll bring you to Blog Brainstormer. And it's basically organized in 5 main sections, and I don't remember all the sections, but some of them I do remember. So it starts with the timely topics, because the more timely you can be with your topics, the better. From an urgency, relevancy, people kind of will pay attention to things that are right around the corner and deadline driven, to timely topics. The rest are evergreen, meaning, it's a good topic in August, it'll be a good topic in November. But then there are better topics that are more timely in August and more timely in November. But nonetheless, timely topic. Then there are numerical nuggets, because we know in the world of content, the 3 secrets of this and the 7 habits of that and the top 10 of that. We know numerals and numbers attract our attention and makes it easy for us to consume the content, but also makes it easy for us to produce the content. For me to say, hey, Jeff, what are the 5 mistakes that every sales professionals make? You can probably rattle off, maybe there are more than 5, maybe there are less, but arbitrarily, you can think of 5 mistakes. And the 5 mistakes rule is another thing we use with our clients. What are 5 mistakes that your prospect makes? And then you can create a lead magnet out of that, or a blog article, or a video blog. So numerical nuggets. Then there are the client questions, like alliterations, right? Timely topics, numerical nuggets, client questions. The client questions are the frequently asked questions, but also the stuff that they don't know that I mentioned earlier, right? And part of that is going to be, you can't answer every question. Perhaps there are other experts and other resources that are better apt at answering those questions. And those are opportunities for cross-promotion content, which is kind of another section of how can you bring in other people in your content. The more you're doing cross-promotion, an interview show is an example of that. But a Q&A blog can be that, even just referencing other people in your blogs, in your social media posts, at mentioning them, etc. The more you can include other people who are referral relationships and client resources, the better, because they are more apt to share that type of content to their circle of influence, which is that kind of Venn diagram, that Venn marketing that is really cool from win-win perspective. And so there's definitely a section that I'm missing. I know there's one on personal topics, which may or may not have an alliterative phrase, but personal topics really enable us to kind of peel back the onion layer. Ultimately, we don't care how much you know until we know how much you care. We like to do business with people we know, like, and trust. We like doing business with people who seem to be like us, or at least that we like them. And so peeling back the onion layer and talking about how you got into your line of work, why you chose the specific market, what brings out your passion, your values, your hobbies, who you are as a person becomes even more important than what you do as a profession. And so couple the two together, your character and competency can be really charismatic. And so that's the personal topics. And you can get it all, videosocials.net/topics. It's really easy.
Really nice.
And I would say one other thing, Jeff.
Please.
It's a heck of a lot more fun and interesting and productive to do it with someone else. So if you have a referral partner that you really know well, or that you want to get to know well, preferably outside of your company, because then you get to know them really well. You're able to think 30,000 feet and outside the forest for them, and vice versa. And you're getting to know each other, basically using it as a networking conversation. But you can do it with a business partner or key personnel as well. Do it with someone else. If you have a sales trainer or a coach, or if you don't yet have one, talk to Jeff, and Jeff can do it with you. And so do it with someone else. It's a lot more interesting than staring at the sheet by yourself.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I think, I do stand-up comedy on the side, and I happened to be at a club, and I met Kevin James one night. Actually didn't realize that it was him. I was sitting across the table from him, and was literally a second away from opening my mouth and say, you probably hear this all the time, but you look just like Kevin James. And somebody walked over and said, oh, yeah. Kevin, so nice to meet you. I'm like, holy crap, I'm sitting and talking to Kevin James.
It was so good, a good line.
I said, big fan and all that stuff. I said, I love performing. It's the writing that's tough. And he gave the same advice that you did. He said, you know what you need? Go find a writing partner and sit down and just brainstorm with each other. It's much more fun and easier. And, the thing about writing any type of content, including comedy, is I don't write anything that I don't think is funny, but it doesn't matter what I think is funny. It matters what the audience thinks is funny. And when you have a partner to work with, they should be the type of person, and you should have the type of relationship where they'll say, that's stupid, don't do that.
Yeah, it's that blogging buddy, running partner concept. I mean, inevitably our members at Video Socials know, because it's very much a group environment. Everyone's giving each other feedback, and that feedback approach helps tremendously. It's like that writer's workshop angle that we were going for. That mastermind is another way of looking at it. So if you belong to things like that, a mastermind, or you've got a coach, a mentor, a trainer, a business partner, or of course a Video Socials group, enable you to gain and give feedback.
So this is a sales professional audience, and you are a marketing expert. I cannot resist to ask you, what's the most effective way, or at least some of the most effective ways, to generate quality leads? All salespeople need leads so that we can turn them into prospects and eventually, hopefully, sales. What are some of the ways you recommend?
Love on your referral relationships. I mean, we know the most effective and the closest to close are the word of mouth referrals, right? So from that aspect, yes, focus on, there's a whole world of outbound. I love outbound. But the more I can love on my referral relationships, including our clients, because our clients can turn into raving fans and they are great referral relationships, sometimes even the best ones, right? Because if they are in a position to rave about the results and rave about the process, that's awesome, right? They're paying for it and they literally love it. It's even more powerful than a referral relationship sometimes. So referral relationship is a trusted expert in your market. The more you can share, promote, feature, highlight them, the better it is. Not only, of course, they're liking it, they're remembering you. And now you kind of have that built-in reciprocity of guilt trip, so to speak, where now they feel like they owe you something. And you don't want to do it for that reason. It shouldn't be quid pro quo. But knowing that, quite frankly, that is part of human society, that the more you give to others, more others want to give to you, the golden rule. And so from that aspect, that's what I would say, that what can you do, like find your top 5 people that refer you the most amount of business, and that you can work that strength. And if they could just recommend one more potential client, one more client for you, that's tremendous. There's more where that came from. That's tremendous. You can also take 5 people that who ought to be referring you, but you just haven't cracked the code yet. You just haven't figured out, why aren't they referring us? Like, what is going to take? What's going to take? Loving on them. Lead by example. Feature them. Feature them in your blog article, in your social media post, on your podcast, in whatever thing you're doing. And of course, if you're not doing any of those things, that's where to start. But now give them the platform and say, hey, look, I'm creating this blog article. Even if you've never blogged at all, you can basically email them and say, hey, I'm writing a blog article on my website, and I'd love to ask you a couple of questions and feature what you say in my article. Well, now you have content. They're not going to say no. Even if you have 10 people reading your blog, that's 10 more people for them that they wouldn't have otherwise. So it's not the quantity of your audience, it's that quality of relationship. And so love on them.
Love that. And you can also put those 5 people together, help them to network with each other. Because
there you go.
I'm with you. The law of reciprocity absolutely works. And you don't do it just because I'm doing something for you, so I know I'm going to get something back. But it is human nature. When
you plant enough seeds,
you tend to get.
Yeah.
What is co or cross marketing, and how do you prioritize referral relationships for that?
Yeah, I think we touched on it all throughout our time, right? That the more we can share with others, the more we can highlight others, more we can do with others. I mean, this is an example of cross marketing where I'm going to share this episode with my circle. Obviously, you're sharing it with your circle in live stream. So the more you can do stuff like that, find opportunities where you can do things together, even coming up with topics for each other, as we talked about for our blogging buddy, that kind of thing. So find opportunities to be outside of just your solo world, especially as sales professionals. We tend to be very solo and self-driven. At least the more successful of us are. That we know we can wake up in the morning and we can set appointments, create appointments, attend to those appointments, and it's a solo game. But it doesn't need to be. That team effort and outside and creating a team is even more powerful. So it doesn't need to be people within your organization. I would actually say if you're part of a sales organization, it's even more powerful to do these things outside of the organization and bring in those other new people. That new energy, new blood, new topics is going to be great. And that's the whole concept of how can I bring in other people? How can I promote others? And knowing that, they will inevitably promote it because it's for their self-interest, right? We're just basically activating their selfishness and their self-interest to share that content, to share that expertise. And thus you're branding yourself in their brain, let alone in their audience and circle.
Got it. Regarding podcasts, do you think everybody should have a podcast? I mean, aren't there too many crappy ones already, or should everybody have a podcast?
Yeah, thousands are starting every day. Like, it's, I think the number one criteria is, are you going to enjoy having conversations with other people? Like, are you going to enjoy playing the role of a talk show host? Now, there are podcasts that are, most podcasts I would venture to maybe guess or conjecture are actually solo. And, there's a world of entertainment podcasts that are not necessarily business oriented like this. And a lot of them are solo or narrative. They're story driven that are kind of like audiobooks as podcasts. And these kinds of, video interview podcasts, my world, your world, I think that's the first thing. Like, are you going to enjoy it? Jeff, you're a conversationalist. You like people. I like talking to people. So I would have these kind of conversations anyway. If you say, hey, Vik, why don't we have a cup of coffee and we connect? We haven't chatted in a while. We'd have this kind of conversation anyway. Now we may as well do it, here on StreamYard or Zoom or what have you, and turn it into a podcast and promote each other. But are you going to have if you enjoy those kinds of networking conversations or those get to know you type of conversations, well, you may as well record it and turn it into content for each other. it's almost like a silly waste of time not to. And so you may as well. So to say that, yeah, there's this glut of podcasts, well, for those of us who swim in these waters, we feel like almost everyone has a podcast. But vast majority of people don't have a podcast. And vast majority of people don't even know if they're listening to a podcast or not. Like some people are like, oh, who listens to podcasts? No one listens to podcasts. Like, yeah, but you go on YouTube and you watch their video. That is a podcast, whether you call it or not, whether they even turn it into an audio podcast, whatever it is. It doesn't matter if you call it a blog or a podcast or a video show or whatever. It doesn't matter if you call it spaghetti, linguine, ravioli, or, rotini. It's all the same pasta dough. It's all the same stuff. And so from that aspect, one, not everyone has a podcast. Two, not everyone should have a podcast. If you, quite frankly, don't enjoy playing the role of a talk show host, then don't do a talk show. There are other forms of content marketing that maybe you ought to do. They're more solo driven, or that you say people are going to submit questions and I'll turn that into a written article and not have to interface with people. But most likely you enjoy the company of others to some regard. That's why you're in sales, or you just love the money part of it. But hopefully you also enjoy the people part of it. And so that's the number one criteria. The number two is you probably aren't going to be the next Howard Stern or Joe Rogan in terms of having hundreds of millions of dollars or hundreds of millions. You may have that, but hundreds of millions of listeners and audience. But again, like I mentioned a couple of moments ago, it's not the quantity of that audience. It's not the millions or even the tens of thousands. It's the quality of relationship that you're developing with your guest, because they're a word of mouth referral source, maybe even a potential client. But it's also their circle of influence and the dozens of people that watch and listen to you. And while that doesn't feel great from a vanity metric standpoint, suppose you did a seminar and you had 50 people in the room. That's pretty good. Suppose you that's 50 listeners. That's pretty good. It's 50 more that you wouldn't have had otherwise, or 100 or 1,000, whatever that small number is to you. That 1,000 people that you're connected to on LinkedIn, that's your audience. So they may not all listen to the full podcast, they may only listen to a clip, or they just see your name and now you're top of mind because of that reason. And so focus on the number that you have. If you can't be with ones you love the one you're with. So from that aspect, focus on that quality relationship, because all it takes is that one client and then it pays for itself. And I say that to our clients all the time, that they're like, all right, in the first season, we're doing 12 episodes. You get one or two clients, it's going to more than pay for our service. So season one probably pay for our service for season two, and everything else is gravy. Everything else that you're doing for fun. Like, let's just focus on getting that one or two clients. And now from an economic perspective, it's fulfilling itself. Yes, it's even better when it gets 5 to 7 clients. We'll get there. But focus, like I said earlier, focus on going to the gym every day. Focus on the simple granular stuff. And get one or two clients out of your podcast. Now, if you're not getting one or two leads out of your podcast every episode, well, then we need to kind of shift things and look at how we can change that. And, I'm working on that for our clients. I'm like, how can we crack that code? Because I think vast majority of us, we get into the habit of it and forget about the results, which is not a good thing. And then we wake up and realize, why are we doing this? Is this whole thing a waste of time? And then we give up maybe too soon, or we give up without tweaking and improving. And I think that improving is the right thing. That it's like, hey, you're going to the gym, but you're not gaining muscle mass or losing weight. It's not don't go to the gym. Like that, that's not the right approach. No, it's what are you doing at the gym? That is really the right approach. Like, yeah, all right, you're there at the gym, but you've been checking, your TikTok all the time instead of doing the right activities in the gym. Well, all right, well, you have a podcast. Are you doing the right activities that go along with it? So it's not give up on content marketing. It's improving how you're doing the content.
Got it. Yeah. The reason I'm not getting big is because I'm watching videos of other people in the gym on TikTok.
Yeah, well, that's a different issue.
Vik, it's interesting that you say what you just said, because when I first, and I'm going to say why I started doing this in a moment, but when I first started doing this podcast, I didn't really think I was going to enjoy it much, because I like to be the center of attention. I like to be the one who's being interviewed. But the truth is, I love the heck out of it. I love having these conversations, because I always learn something, and I do love to provide value for other people. The reason I did this in the first place, it was on the advice of my coach, because I knew I was going to be putting together sales training videos that I could sell to the public. And I actually was all excited one day in a coaching session. I said, I've come up with a great idea. I've been in sales forever. I'm a sales trainer. I'm going to produce videos that people can buy. And she said, that is a great idea. Who are you going to sell them to? And I said, any salesperson? She goes, yep. And how are you going to reach them? And I'm like, And that's where I realized, oh, I need to create an audience for myself. And that was really when the Sales Pro Network was born. I said, I need to create an audience that likes me. And I just came out with these videos. They just were released 2 weeks ago. But the truth is, I really do love doing this. I don't make any money from this. At least I haven't yet. But and I can't remember whether it's been 2 or 3 years now. But we'll get there. In the meantime, I'm just going to keep doing them.
And I think you touched on something where a lot of folks who love being guests on podcasts are like, why bother hosting my own show? Well, first of all, it may not be right for you to host. You may not be a good fit to host. So that maybe if you don't enjoy getting to know other people, then don't do it. But even if you want to be a center of attention, we all remember Phil Donahue. We all know Oprah. So from that aspect, it's not as if you become a host and now suddenly no one knows who you are. In fact, if anything, that repetition, more people are going to know you. And Larry King, et cetera. We all know the interviewers, the hosts, even more than the guests who can come and go. So the hosts have way more permanence and way more audience and community building, as you mentioned. So if you love being the center of attention, hosting the show is even more important. And if from the aspect of being a guest on other people's shows, yes, it's actually easier to be a guest on other people's podcasts when you yourself have your own stage, your own podcast, et cetera. So from that aspect, yeah, it's not right fit for everyone. But for a lot of people who enjoy the company of others, yeah, it could be a fun pursuit.
Yep. And before we go, you mentioned Joe Rogan a moment ago. I actually dropped his name last week. I have an idea for a channel on Sirius. And on LinkedIn, I found the senior vice president of programming and sent him an email saying, I've got a great idea for you. I'm not looking to be the next Joe Rogan, but ... He did check out my profile. He hasn't responded to me or given me an appointment yet, but maybe one day we'll see the Sales Pro Network on Sirius. But
all right, awesome.
Our time is up.
I hope you return as a guest at that time.
Absolutely. I'm sharing my screen right now. Can you tell people how they can reach you if they're interested in working with you or finding out more about what you do?
Yeah, it's really easy. I'm not hard to find, as you can imagine, given what I do. So I can read the screen for those listening and not watching. So Vik, V-I-K, is short for Vikram. So VIK at videosocials.net is the easiest way. Email me, shoot me your questions. I'm happy to help. I mentioned videosocials.net/topics for the blog Brainstormer. That's really easy to use, and there's even a link to the AI topic that I mentioned, or the AI method. And then LinkedIn.com/IN/Vikram Rajan, which is my full name. And that's really easy.
Well, Vik, this has been great stuff. I appreciate your time, and thank you very much for sharing your brilliance generously. And I will end as I always do. Guys, please remember that sales is a game of making things happen. So get out there and make sales happen. Thanks, Vik. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Jeff.